like pro sports. You're not, you know what I mean?
The next day he comes up with Timothy Roth, the actor. They were working on that movie Gridlocked, right? So Tupac, totally different mode. He's got his suit on. He's playing this little, he's with all these white people, and he's playing, he's about as white as you could possibly get, right? And I'm still kind of pissed from the night before, but he's got this grin on his face. And then he says to me, "Bet you're glad this ain't a Tupac session, aren't you?" I said, "No, it's whack, man. I want to make a record." And he said, "From now on, you're my engineer." I said, "Okay, let's do it."
I was one of the engineers on his Machiavelli record. We got to work on 3 songs, White Man's World, Me and My Girlfriend, and Crazy.
And then he walked in one day, and he said, "I just got an order from Suge to do a diss album." So now he was in his diss mode. I'm going to diss everybody on the East Coast. So we were doing that for a while, but that kind of got old, you know, because, like, how many times you want to listen to somebody getting dissed?
I'm going to give the people what they want. And what they want is the real stuff that they can feel.
So then the album, which he said he had to have done in 3 weeks from an order from Suge, started to change directions from the diss stuff to the more political and social stuff.
There's sort of a flowering of his career during the mid-90s at the same time that hip-hop is kind of flowering as well within the mainstream and going global as well. And I think at the time that he died, he was becoming a really, really interesting character. I mean, the Machiavelli album on the one hand is real deep and dark, and on the other hand, he had real pop-type stuff as well that are coming out on Death Row.
We're pulling off, like, the Hit 'Em Up song where he's dissing Biggie, which is cool because that became a video and a single, right? So that was cool, so we got out of that one. And then we took the Nas song off their Friends, which I actually told him one night after I drank about 4 Hennessy's, I said, "You actually sound stupid dissing Nas for 3.5 minutes. He looked at me like I was crazy, right? I said, "Take it off the album." The 4 Hennessy's kind of helped on that one. So he said, "All right, take it off. We'll do some more songs tomorrow." He left the studio, comes back in. He says, "Put that song back on the album." I said, "Sure, no problem."
Boy, he had a lot to say, man. He was definitely a poet and sort of a, oh, what would they call it, a seer? Almost like a shamanic seer, a visionary.
Swear to God, he walked in 5 minutes later, he goes, "You're right, man. Take that shit off. We're changing the whole album, man. It's going to be my Machiavelli album," which I didn't even know who Machiavelli was. And I was like, okay. And we're sitting there with the album, not even really mixed. And next thing you know, we get a phone call to head in to master it. And stuff isn't even mixed. You know, we just have the DAT tapes from the nights of the sessions. And next thing I know, the album disappears and it comes out. You know, so like those aren't even really mixes. Those are like from the session.
Whether properly finished or not, Machiavelli has sold more than 5 million copies. The album before Machiavelli was All Eyes on Me, Pac's second release for Death Row, and the first ever double album by a rapper. Pac's old friend Money B from Digital Underground last saw Tupac when All Eyes on Me had just been released.
So, you know, it was about at least 9 months or so before he had died or whatever. And we went to the club, you know, and he basically had a little section, bought drinks, and then me and him were talking, and I was just telling him that it was when All Eyes on Me had came out. And I was just like joking, like, "Dude, you didn't call me to be on the album." He's like, "You supposed to just come down." Everybody came down and blah, blah, blah. And he was telling me about, he had a lot more albums, like he had already done a whole lot more music, and that he had a soundtrack that he was going to be in charge of, and blah, blah, blah. You know, it later turned out to be the Gridlock soundtrack.
Yeah, that's right. 100.3 The Beat, Harvey, Hip Hop and R&B, B-side show. Hey, Sly on the 2 turntables. Eric Kubici right here holding it down on the MIC. Check it out. Y'all want to holler at us. 888-696-1003. Inside is another bonus blast weekend. We got money in our pockets.
To me, All Eyes on Me was my favorite album because he had just already done his time. He came out of jail, and he had already, I think before Tupacalypse and those records were very raw. He kind of hadn't lived life yet. I think after he got put away for a minute, he came back and he had already kind of thought about things and he had realized what was going on.
Obviously an obsession to keep going, returning to the same themes, returning to the same set of agonies, and seeing if with this song he can come up with some kind of resolution. And of course he can't, and so he has to write another one.
All Eyes on Me was one of my favorites, definitely. I've lost that thing about 30 times. Either I've lost it or people have stolen it from my car, you know what I mean? I think everybody's only I don't think nobody alive that owns only about one copy of All Eyes on Me, you know what I mean? Everybody gangs them from each other, so. I got a couple right now I stole too, so whatever.
But that's what drove every great artist. And I guess that's why, as I said, I'm willing to put Tupac up against anyone.
Usually he was more social conscious, like you listen to Tupac Lives Now, and even in Strictly for My Niggas or whatever, he had more of a message, like All Eyes on Me was some gangster shit, like fuck everybody. The way I had never heard him just be so much like that, and he was like, man, I just had to get that off my chest.
Yo man, everybody's always labeling shit.
In 1995, only a year before All Eyes on Me, came what is regarded as Tupac's crossover record, Me Against the World. This was the first album ever to be put out by someone who was incarcerated at the time of release. With this album, Pac managed to create a commercial hit with artistic integrity intact.
And, you know, you may listen to any song by Tupac and think, wow, all kinds of contradictions, I'm being pulled all over the place with respect to my sympathies. You have the song he wrote to his mother. On the one hand, things that are really paying homage to women, and then you have things on the other side that say bitch, and those are sometimes on the same album, so you say, well, there's a contradiction there.
For example, on Me Against the World, he got a song called Young Niggas, where he telling fools, man, you could be a doctor or a lawyer, you ain't got to be on the street selling dope. You know, I mean, that's a whole message of the song.
But in Tupac, I think the contradictions are there almost at every moment along the way. We are being pulled up and down at the same time. And I feel that he did not know which way to go.
Then he got another song, Dear Mama, where he's talking about, you know, his mama failed. He said, even as a crack fiend, mama, you still a black queen, mama. You know, so I mean, when we hear that in the hood, you know, Pac mama, dope fiend.
The fact that he found musical ways of making those contradictions so palpable at every given moment. His desire to be tough, his desire to be vulnerable, which I think shows up in every phrase he ever produced.
Tupac wasn't the greatest metaphorical rapper. He wasn't the greatest, like, rhythm rapper, like a Rakim or something like that. He wasn't the best MC in terms of rocking a party. But what Tupac brought, I think, to hip-hop was he was able to inhabit so many different types of souls.
The beauty of Pac's voice is also in there in the mix. It's a voice that is very innocent. And it often has an upward inflection, as though it's questioning, as though, for all the toughness of the words, there's still this child that has been damaged and that wants to be heard.
Before these albums, the vulnerable tough guy had found himself in prison, and a certain record label boss named Suge Knight came to his rescue.
What happened was Suge was interested in signing him, and of course he was an Interscope artist at that time. And from what I hear is that Jimmy Iovine had was not too keen on possibly getting him out of prison at the time, and I think that's what made Suge decide to do it. And but when he did come out, after Suge got him out, Suge totally concentrated on his career from day one, you know, and they became very close.
Effectively ending Pac's stay at Interscope. No one will ever know if this was a fair deal.
And I met him the night he arrived because we had a celebratory dinner party that night at a place called Monty's. And of course the next day he was in the studio and never stopped working until his demise, you know, from that day forward. What he did do that was very interesting was Tupac brought the work ethic at Death Row to an all-time high. I mean, everyone was scurrying then to actually do work when they would, you know, including Dr. Dre, who really was, you know, would just take their time in the studio and so on.
This was where Tupac's fast and rich living really kicked in. The Death Row months, while full of hard work, were also full of hard play.
I recall we were shooting